Dear Mary, it's been much too long, but I am consistently terrible. So I won't waste any of your time. Let's just talk.
Hey, hi, hello, hi. Welcome to the Talk Your Knit podcast. I'm DeeDee, one half of this podcast correspondence, and I'm so happy to be talking with you today. It's been a while, obviously, and I just wanted to check in, say hello, see how your year is going. I don't have any finished objects. Is this a new WIP? I guess I have a new WIP, but I really just wanted to. When I got the idea for this podcast, the thought was that we would have a discussion topic, right? Like a thing in knitting that I just wanted to talk about and get other people's opinions on. And that's kind of what this episode is. Well, that's exactly what this episode is about. I want to talk about gauge swatching. And I kind of just want to know how other people feel about it. So feel free to let me know in the comments. But I'm going to tell you my thoughts on gauge swatching, I guess, after I tell you about this. This is my WIP. It's half of a two-piece set that I'm working on. I saw an Instagram image of a crocheted set that looked kind of like a seashell bodice, like a seashell bustier, and then a skirt with a slit. And it was crochet. But I was like, I could probably make something similar to that in knitting. And that's where this comes from. So I'm not self-drafting it. It's based on a couple of free patterns, which I will, of course, link in the description and put in the show notes. Yeah, it's based on some free patterns, and I don't know. I've ripped back a couple of times. I have a vision in my head, and the goal is to make the vision happen, like as I see it. So I don't think I'm going to be happy with it until it is what I have in my head. When I started it back in May, it was supposed to be for the cruise that we went on in June, but I didn't finish it in time. And like I said, I have a vision in my head. I'm using Knit Picks palette. Knit Picks palette, 2 strands held together in 4 shades of pink, and then this yellow, because the image that I saw initially was pink and yellow. Pink and yellow are my favorite colors, and I just think it's really pretty. I used this very hot pink magenta at the top. This is the waistband, and it's not, I did the 2 strands held together so that I could do a fade, and I think the fade is very effective from the second pink all the way to the yellow. It is not very effective here. When I initially bought yarn, I bought this magenta, I bought this lightest pink, and I bought the yellow. And those were my 3 colors initially. And I could not make these 2 fade together reasonably at all. Like there was no way of getting from this magenta to this light pink cleanly. So I bought these 2 in the middle to even that transition, but there's just nothing there's no pink in the palette collection that is as saturated as this hot pink. So it's still a very jarring fade. Like I said, these other 4 colors down here fade beautifully together. This pink to yellow, the lightest pink to the yellow, is exquisite. And also this like heathered pink to the lightest pink, the second to the lightest, beautiful. Like it was hard for me even to tell when I was counting rows where that blend starts. Like it's beautiful. But I don't know. That hot pink at the top it's just not the tea. And like I said, I'm very concerned with this coming out the way I have it in my head. It's not even like recreating the pin at this point. Like the pin was the jumping off point for the idea, definitely. but it's more like making the vision that I have in my head. And I'm simulating some of that, because it's a crochet, I'm simulating some of that crochet look by putting yarn overs strategically. I don't know, it's kind of giving me fish scale, mermaid scale, like vibes. And when I was making it initially, it was supposed to be like a bathing suit cover up, so I didn't think it would be a problem to have like all of those yarn overs in there because they create little holes. I mean, honestly, I'm probably just gonna wear it as a set once it's done. I really do want to finish it before summer is over, so I can just have it. I'm very excited to have it. I also knit separately a scalloped edge that I'm going to attach here. I think the waistband that I did was very ingenious. I mean, I don't think I came up with this idea by any means, but I did a, what's it called? What is it called? What is the cast on called? Goodness, a provisional cast on. I did a provisional cast on. I knit however many rows, I think it was like 9. And then you purl a row for the turn. And then you knit 9 more rows. And that makes like your waistband casing for the elastic. So then because I did the provisional cast on, I could connect that back with the working yarn. And like, that's how I closed it, by knitting that provisional cast on back into like the body of the skirt. So I could put my elastic in there at the beginning. So as soon as I finished knitting that second set of 9 stitches before I connected the provisional cast on to the skirt, like to the working yarn, I put my elastic in there. So my elastic, that's already done. Like the elastic casing is already filled. I have nothing to worry about there. And then it left, because it has that turn row that was a purl row, it left this line of ridges that I'm going to Kitchener stitch a scalloped border, like a scalloped edge that I already knit onto. I think it's going to be amazing. I'm very excited. So that is my current project. I do want to make the set, so there will be a seashell bustier-ish bodice also. And when I finish both of those pieces, I will put a video about them on my channel so you can see what I did. It won't be a tutorial or anything, just kind of a project wrap-up, review, reveal, that type of thing, but with knitting. Okay, so now that I've introduced you to my knitted mermaid sets, I don't have any other projects that I'm working on. I don't have any finished objects. So let's talk about gauge swatching. Personally, I'm of 2 minds about gauge swatching. On the one hand, I see the utility. I understand like why they tell you to do it. But at the same time, I don't want to. First, I just want to start the project. Like if I start knitting a project, it's because I need to have the thing. You know what I mean? I enjoy the process of knitting. I love knitting. I will be knitting either way. But if I am knitting, I want to have the thing that I'm working on. That's important to me. And if I'm gauge swatching, then I'm not making the thing. And that's what I want to do. And also, it feels to me like a waste of yarn. Like the yarn that I'm using to gauge swatch, I could be using to make the thing that I want to have. And I know you can salvage the yarn from your gauge swatch and use it in like your project. I know you can do that. I'm aware. I did it with my Joni and Prithian, the Joni boat neck by Poison Girls. I did that in Red Door Fiber Studios, A Court of Thorns and Roses mini skeins. And by the time I got to like the sleeves on that, I was very low on yarn. And I did have to salvage some yarn from my gauge swatch to finish that to the extent that I could. So like I'm familiar with the concept, but like, are you actually? And when I do make gauge swatches, I like to keep the gauge swatch like for reference for later. And I don't know, it seems like a waste of yarn to me, especially when I started knitting. I started knitting in high school. I, didn't have a lot of money. And so yarn was like it was a splurge. It was if I got to knit a project, that was a big deal for me because I didn't work in high school. I was very blessed to have parents that told me that my job was to go to school and get good grades, which is cool, but that doesn't leave you with a lot of freedom to do the things that you just want to do. Um, I didn't want for anything. Don't get me wrong. Like all of my needs were taken care of. My parents were very generous, very loving. Like that's not a complaint to make, but like it's hard to justify in 2005 why you need yarn because like nobody knits. Nobody I knew growing up knit. My mother doesn't knit. Neither of my grandmothers knit. Like nobody I knew did this. So it was really hard to be like, yes, mother and father who provide for me food and shelter and clothing, who pay for me to go to this all-girls Catholic school, keep a roof over my head, and all the expensive accoutrement of being like a track athlete, all that kind of stuff. Like, but I also need yarn for my mental health. You know what I mean? So I didn't have access to a lot of yarn then. I did the best I could. We had home ec at the school that I went to that like taught sewing and knitting like as a class. I never got into that class, but the teacher would see me knitting and would pass me like whatever leftover schemes she had. So it was a lot of red heart, a lot of scrubby, a lot of that. So like yarn was precious. I didn't want to waste yarn on gauge swatching. And then now I've become more discerning with the yarn that I buy. So it's a lot less red heart, but yarn is still a splurge. If I'm gonna buy, Red Door Fiber Studios or Haute Knit Yarn or Bumblebee Acres Farms, that's money that could be going to my boys. That's money that could be going to an experience with them, or that's money that could be going to a bill or going into our house. So it's not like I just have that money to be doing with whatever. If I have that money and I'm going to use that money, I want to use it as effectively as possible. So like gauge swatching feels like a waste. Again, like I said, you can reclaim that yarn, but who's really doing that? Like for real. So yeah, my gum falls on my mouth. So yeah, part of me doesn't want to waste the time to make a gauge swatch. Part of me doesn't want to use that yarn in gauge swatching. I just want to do the thing. And bad girl being bad, if I start knitting the project and I get 20 rows in and I realize that my gauge is off, I can just tear back and start over, you know what I mean? Or I can change my gauge based on like what I'm doing once I start. So if I know I need this and this square, then once I've knit 20 rows, then I'll know if it's actually going to make it and I'll be able to change accordingly. But like that's how you end up with, again, my Joni boat neck, which just fits me oddly. Like it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. That was a bad example because I did make a gauge swatch for my Joni boat neck and it still fit me oddly. Maybe I'm just bad at gauge swatching. Go figure. No, but when I say that, I mean you're supposed to knit the number of stitches and rows so that you can have an idea of how things are going to work out later. And I understand the importance, or I understand the utility, but gosh darn it, do I not want to do it? You know what I mean? I want to dig into a project as quickly as possible. And I just don't consider gauge swatching a part of digging into to a project. For some people, it is second nature. Like when they pick up a new yarn, when they pick up a new pattern, they immediately gauge swatch and just like have that on file so that they know. And it's a part of their process, like the process of making whatever object that they are making. And like I'm jealous of those people the same way I'm jealous of people who like weave in ends as they go. Like I aspire to, but I won't. I never can. I always say that I will. And like I have on a couple of projects weave in ends as I go. But it's not like a consistent thing. It's never something I go back to. Same thing with gauge swatching. I am much more likely to knit a swatch now than I was when I started knitting. But I don't ever want to. It's never something that like my hands think about. It's like it's one of those steps in the process that I do because I have to, not because not out of a love for doing it. And I think that's where I land on gauge swatching is like because I desire to make a good project in the end, I will put up with my dislike for the process of gauge swatching. Because it's not just knitting the swatch. It's knitting the swatch and then blocking the swatch and then measuring the swatch and then using that information to make the necessary changes to the pattern so that it fits the way that you want it. And I'm lucky in that I generally knit for myself. I don't have to worry about knitting for other people and things fitting them. I think if you were knitting for others or if you knit for production, like for sale or you took commissions, then that would be a whole other kettle of fish. Kettle of fish? Sure. But as someone who knits almost exclusively selfishly, I can kind of get away with it because if it doesn't fit, it just doesn't fit me. Or I just have to style it differently. You know, like when I wear my Joni boat neck, I wear it with jeans because I can hide how oddly it fits at the hem with a pair of jeans. I don't know. I guess I put gauge swatching in the same place I put hand sewing mentally. I hate hand sewing. I'm not good at it. I derive no joy from it. I don't want to do it ever. But I hate, and I do mean hate, the view of visible top stitching more than I dislike hand sewing. And I would rather like gnaw my own foot off than have visible top stitching in a situation in an area of a garment where I could have done hand sewing. It's just it's antithetical to my personality. I just can't. And that's the same way I feel about gauge swatching. I hate getting to the end of a knitting project and it being wrong, or it not fitting properly, or it looking sloppy. So much more than I dislike having to make a gauge swatch. And for that reason, I continue to gauge swatch. Do I like it? No. Do I want to do it? Absolutely not. But that damn Joni boat neck, I have to do it. I have to. Because it has to look, the knitting project has to look good when it's done. And if I'm going to make the yarn investment and the time investment and the emotional investment that knitting is for me, then it's got to be right when it comes out. But that's just me. And I'm just talking. But I would love to know how you feel. I would love to know your thoughts on gauge swatching. Do you think that there is a more pointless aspect to knitting than gauge swatching? It's not even pointless. It's just so annoying. Can you think of anything that is more annoying in knitting than gauge swatching? And can you think of something else to analogize it to? Like I said, it's hand sewing for me. I hate it. I don't want to do it, but I will endure it for the greater good. But what is it for you? Or do you love gauge watching? Is gauge watching like the absolute best and you get super excited? Are you one of those people who like has a book of their gauge swatches that they keep and reference and, oh, I know how this yarn is going to function because I made a gauge swatch? Like, are you one of those? I aspire to be. I will never be. But I appreciate that there are all types in the world. Oh, it looks like it's getting dark. I think it's going to rain soon, which is exciting. But the boys will be home soon. It's almost time for my oldest to get out of school. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble. I appreciate that you took the time to talk your knit with me. I hope you enjoy, and I'll talk to you later.
That's all from me. But what do you think? Sincerely, DeeDee.